Guys, my name is Ankush Gaurav and I welcome you to Contour series. In the previous tutorial, we learned how to create a basic REST API by making use of response body annotation over this controller method. So after performing all the steps as specified in the previous tutorial, now when any user is going to make a GET request using this REST API, the request is going to be received by this controller method. And here, because we are making use of response body annotation over this controller method, it's simply going to indicate Spring MVC framework not to make use of any view technology while preparing the final response. Instead, it is supposed to be returning the return value of this function directly to the client as a response. Now, while returning this directly to the client, if Spring MVC framework is going to detect JSON related jars onto the project's class path, which we included in the last session, it's going to convert this Java object into its equivalent JSON text, and then same is going to be returned to the client as a response. So after I make a GET request, I get this JSON text as a response from the application. And whatever I've just described in a very brief manner, I explained in detail in the previous tutorial. Now let's proceed further, learn how to have a little more control over the JSON response that we have received here from the application. So let's start. Because if you observe this JSON response, what we have received from the application, you'd find that it has sent us 3 rows, first row, and then second row, and then third row. And in each row in this JSON response, it has included certain key value pairs: student name, then its value, student hobby, then its value, and so on. Now, what all key value pairs it has included here? Well, whatever properties we have inside student class, student name, student hobby, and so on. And that's what it has included in each row. Now, for some reason, what if you want to alter the name of keys, what it has included in each row in this JSON response? Let's suppose you want to alter student name to student underscore name, or student hobby to just hobby. How to do that? Well, in Spring MVC framework, it's a very easy task, guys. All you need to do is whichever property name you want to alter, simply specify JSON property annotation on top of it and pass the desired name as an argument to it. Suppose I want to change student name to student underscore name. So what's going to happen after this small change? Now when I'm going to make a GET request using this REST API, I expect that in each row, it's not going to include student name, but student underscore name. So let's very quickly check this out. See, now it has included student underscore name, and earlier it included student name key in each row. Because if you look at the same JSON response, each row in this JSON response, you would find that Spring MVC framework has used its on ordering mechanism, to list the key value pairs. So it has listed student hobby first, then mobile, and then date of birth. So it has used its on mechanism while choosing which key value pair has to be displayed first and which has to be displayed next. Now, what if you want to have a little more control over this order? You want to provide your own customized order as per your project's requirement. So how to achieve that? Let's suppose here, what if we want date of birth key value pair to be listed, at the first, and then maybe student name key value pair second, and other properties in some sequence. How to achieve that? Well, in Spring MVC framework, that's kind of very easy job to perform, guys. You are just required to make use of the annotation JSON property order on top of the student class, and inside it just go on specifying the order in which you want key value pairs to be displayed in each row. Suppose we want student DOB key to be listed at the first position in each row, and then let's suppose we want student name and then student mobile and then address and then hobby and then skills. So this is the way to achieve that using JSON property order annotation. So after making this small change, now when I'm going to make a request again, I expect that it's going to list key value pairs in the order as I've specified in the student class. Let's check this out. Cool. It has listed now all the key value pairs the way I have instructed it to follow in the student class. Date of birth, then name, then mobile, then address. See, date of birth, then name, then mobile, and then address, then hobby, and then skills, and hobby, and then skills. So it has followed the order exactly the way I instructed it using JSON property order annotation. Now, in the same JSON response, if you observe, in each row, it's displaying all the keys and their corresponding values, whatever, against all the properties what you have in the student class. Now, for some reason, what if you want to instruct Spring MVC framework not to include any specific property in the JSON response? Let's suppose you don't want student skills property to be used in the JSON response. So you don't want student skills key value pair in each record. So how to do that? Well, in Spring MVC framework, that's kind of very easy job to perform, guys. Again, on top of the class, specify an annotation JSON ignore properties, and inside it just go on specifying what all properties of this student class you don't want Spring MVC framework to make use of while preparing the JSON response. Let's suppose I don't want student skills key value pairs to be included in the JSON response, so I would specify it just like this. So after making this change, now if I make a GET request, I expect that it's not going to include student skills key and its value in each row. Let's check it out. Cool. See, there is no way it has included student skills in the first record, and same is true for the second record, and same is true for third record. So the idea is whichever property or properties you want to exclude from the JSON response, simply go on specifying here. Suppose here I want to instruct Spring MVC framework to exclude one more key value pairs, against student address property. So this is the way to achieve it. So after this, now in the JSON response, it's not going to include student skills as well as student address. So whichever property or properties you want Spring MVC framework to exclude from the JSON response, go on specifying it as an argument to JSON ignore properties annotation, and you'll be done. All right. Now, one last concept, and we are going to wind up today's session. Because if you look at this JSON response, each row, you observe for most of the keys we are getting null as a value. And why we are getting null as a value? It's simply because that's what we have set over here. So whatever we are going to set over here in each student record, same is what we are going to get here. So because we are setting only name, so we are getting a valid value for the student underscore name key, and for others, because we are not setting, so we are getting null value. So whichever property we are not setting in the controller method, for that we are getting null as the value. It simply indicates that there is no valid value Spring MVC framework found for the corresponding key. Now, what if you have a very special requirement in your project? What you want to achieve is while preparing the JSON response, if Spring MVC framework finds that a certain key has got a value null, then you want Spring MVC framework not to include such key value pairs. So you want Spring MVC framework not to include a key in the JSON response and its corresponding value if that key has got null as its value. How to achieve that? Well, again, that's kind of very easy job to perform, guys. In the student class, just go and specify JSON, include annotation, go inside it. As an argument to that, just write JSON include dot non null, and you are done. So with this annotation JSON include and this argument to that, you are instructing Spring MVC framework, hey Spring MVC framework, while preparing the JSON response, if you observe any keys value as null, then simply exclude it from the JSON response. So here, if you observe except student name, all of the keys have got null as the value. So what it's going to do after making this change? Well, it's going to exclude all those keys which have got null as the values. So now let's make a GET request again on this same URI, REST URI. See, it has sent us again 3 records, but in each record it has included only student underscore name. So it has included now only those keys which have got valid values other than null value. So all null value keys it has excluded from the JSON response, and all that has happened because of this annotation JSON include with this argument. So in this tutorial we learned how to have more control over the JSON response, what application prepares and send to the client when the client makes any request using some REST URI. In the next tutorial we are going to talk about how to make use of an advanced level testing tool for REST API known with the name Postman. And in addition to that, we are also going to talk about some more important REST API concepts like request param, path variable, and many more. Guys, a big thank you for learning Spring MVC RESTful Web Services concepts with me. If you have any feedback or comments, please provide them below the video or simply write to me on this email ID for all of your queries. Please hit the like button if you really liked it, and do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel Gone to Series. And I'm gonna catch you in the next part of this tutorial.